3 tips of the Ooma Hat in honor of Jaden Schwartz.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what do you say, Seattle hockey fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we bring you your favorite team every single day. Erica L. Ayala here, your host, and your happy host, because I now travel with this Ooma Hat. And, it's a bold move, Cotton, given how the Seattle Kraken have played up until lately. But I brought the Ooma Hat with me. I am happy to say that it came in handy. I'm also happy to let you know that today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And I did the 3 tips for Jaden Schwartz. He had a hat trick in the last game against the Kings. A really good showing for the Seattle Kraken, building off of that momentum. We talked about it on the last episode. Even though it was a loss, it was a heartbreaking loss. There were things that the Seattle Kraken were not leaning to because it's like, oh, we want to feel good about ourselves. Positives. It's because no, we need to hammer those things home even more. And I think they cranked it up when we look at some of the stats and the visualizations from this game. Now, we haven't done one of these in a while, but this is the game flow chart. The Seattle Kraken had what head coach Dan Bylsma called probably their best second period this season. And you can see that reflected in this chart. If you take a look at the NHL stats on this game. But it wasn't just the second frame. The Seattle Kraken actually outshot the LA Kings 15-8 in the first period. The second period was much closer, 6-5 in favor of the Seattle Kraken. But I think when Dan Bylsma is talking about this being the best period, so again, here's the shots on goal to the side here. We'll talk about some of these other stats. But I think when Dan Bylsma is talking about that this second period was among the best, it really came because the Seattle Kraken had to be defensive minded. We know Chandler Stevenson scored in the second frame, but nobody else. The Seattle Kraken owning this portion of the game. Now, the third period was a little bit of a different story, and we can talk about that a little bit, but the Seattle Kraken and game management, I think, was probably at a premium in this game against the LA Kings, a very much needed win for your Seattle Kraken, and they get it done. And they get it done through I don't want to say an unlikely hero, because I've been ringing the Jaden Schwartz bell since he came to the Seattle Kraken. I've talked about it before. I knew about his sister and her legacy in women's hockey, the Mandy Schwartz Foundation. And so I was intrigued to learn more about Jaden. He's just been a steadying, a calm presence. He gets a hat trick, gets the empty netter. My favorite goal. I mean, the empty netter was nice because Kakko was actually the player on that breakaway, but he saw Schwartz on the far side of the ice and just makes a fantastic pass. And I mean, all of them were a little bit different for Jaden, but just exciting. He, I think, hit the post, if not on all 3, on 2 of the 3 of them. So he was feeling it. He was in the zone, and I love to see it. What we've heard from Dan Bylsma is that the way that Jaden plays is really carrying this team. And when I say that, yes, we're seeing it reflected in him scoring in the last handful of games, but I think it's also, again, his steady, his calm presence. And Jaden seems like the kind of guy who he's not going to beat you over the head, so to speak, with, inspirational quotes, or he's not going to talk a lot. He's going to get things done. He is definitely a lead by example guy. And the Seattle Kraken have needed an example. I talk about it how much on this show that this just seems like a Seattle Kraken, to summarize, a Seattle Kraken team that is kind of lost. They're lost within their own thoughts. They're lost within their own systems at times. They're lost in execution, and thus being overthinking perhaps. They're failing to execute. Jaden Schwartz is not that. Jaden Schwartz is now with Matty Beniers and Kakko. And as we continue to see, that is our best line. I've been down for the right line, but this Beniers line continues to pick it up. Now, there were actually two lines that were positive in terms of shot quality per Allison Lucan. The Mitchell Stevens line with Brandon Tanev and John Hayden, as well as the Matty Beniers line with Schwartz and Kakko. And the Stevens line created 97%, of all shot quality. That's pretty intense. 85% of all shot quality in 13:03 minutes of ice time for the Beniers line. Schwartz got his fifth hat. I just mentioned the hat trick again. He got his fifth hat trick of his career, and his first since 2019, since March of 2019. This is his fifth, or was his fifth, multi-goal game with Seattle. He now is tied with the maestro, Oliver Bjorkstrand, for third most in franchise history, behind McCann and Eberle. Kakko assisted on all three Schwartz goals. Again, I kind of think the empty netter was my favorite, because Kaapo probably had enough time and space to take that on his own, but he decided to be a little fancy with it. I love it. The first goal so early in the game, setting the tone. And that is something that the Seattle Kraken really hopes will carry over as they host the Buffalo Sabres. They did not start particularly well in that game, so it's definitely something that they are looking at. If we look at this, once again, a quality start for Joey Dax. Joey Daccord, 28 saves on 30 shots faced. The second goal, Dan Bylsma was asked, did you think of challenging it? He said, of course we thought about it. But as JT Brown broke down on the TV broadcast, it was actually Brandon Montour that runs into Daccord and kind of creates that nonsense. If you're an everydayer or an OGer, you might remember I was a little bit put out when Vince Dunn was like, yeah, I just don't think fans understand defense. Like, you can't always push guys out of the way. Now, while I didn't disagree with him that there are circumstantial ways when you clear the front of the net, I did think it was a little harsh to put that on people not knowing hockey, because, I don't like traffic in front of the net. Who does, right? Well, if you're trying to score, I guess you do. But putting that to the side, because we've talked about it on the show. This was, 2 seasons ago. Putting that to the side, that's an example of what Vince Dunn was talking about. Situationally, was that the best time? It certainly wasn't the best execution of trying to clear the front of the net. So you got to pick your poison, pick your battles there. Otherwise, Joey Daccord was great. Bjorkstrand led all skaters in the game in shots from the slot. Also had a team leading 11 controlled exits. And this has been also a difference when it comes to the Seattle Kraken. Bylsma, I think it was at practice yesterday. The Kraken did have practice on Sunday because it's an early start for today. He talked about, the best defense is your offense kind of vibe he was giving. He talked about having puck possession. Having puck possession in your offensive zone is a pretty good defensive strategy, because literally the other team does not have the puck and they're not even close to their net. So, I think there's a focus on the Seattle Kraken getting into the offensive zone, but then keeping the offensive zone, which I'm pretty excited about. So it's, I don't want to say back to basics, but it's back to reestablishing the important areas of the game, reestablishing the ability to do what is necessary to win. And that's what we're seeing from the Seattle Kraken right now. Again, Jaden Schwartz was and has been fantastic for the Seattle Kraken. And I personally love to see it. I said he's captain material, and he's captaining this team pretty well in the absence of Jordan Eberle. We got some updates about Ebbs, still a ways away, but we're hopeful that he just makes a very good recovery. Whether or not he, becomes or he returns to the ice, I think is yet to be seen. But we definitely want him to be able to be healthy. Also want to mention in this game, those of you who listen to the show, I'm not big on hits, or fighting is really more so what I don't like in hockey. But hits and strategic hits, I am all about. Josh Mahura, massive, big-time hit, led to one of Jaden's goals and was a turning point, as we heard Dan Bylsma say in this game. But let's hear from the man of the hour himself, Jaden Schwartz, talking to media after a 4-2 win, the Seattle Kraken over the LA Kings.
2 goals like that. You're playing a goalie that's allowed, I think, 4 goals in his last 5 games. And how big was it to get the opening goal and then just keep coming in?
Yeah, it's important. They're a team that checks pretty hard. They don't give up a whole lot. So they did a good job of being aggressive, and that everyone was pushing the pace, and our D were up in the play and kind of made it hard on them. So it was a good start for us. Considering how the game in Winnipeg ended. That was a frustrating one. I thought we did a great job of responding and not really letting it bother us too much.
And then ahead of that play on the second goal, Josh Mahura makes a pretty nice open ice hit. It allows you guys to capitalize off the transition. I mean, how important is it to take advantage of stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't have scored if he didn't, do that. So that was a great hit for us, and he's been doing a good job of that. Being hard to play against, and we need to continue to do that as a team. But brings a lot of energy. Even if we don't score, just doing the right things, and it was a clean hit, so that was important for us.
When you hit post on the first one, how much you were like, I'm not going to get, that's going to be the way that I'm not able to get this one, and then to finish it off. What was it kind of like for you?
Yeah, I mean, after I hit the post, we had a couple big blocks. Joey had a couple timely saves. Kaapo made a great play. I guess our teammates did a good job of bailing me out for missing that. But it was just a team effort all around. I thought it was guys were laying it on the line tonight. It was it was a fun game.
Jaden, what felt stronger about the team's game defensively in this one? What felt improved?
I thought we were just taking away their time and space a little bit more instead of backing in and giving them too much time. I thought we were on them. They got a lot of good players who can make plays, so you got to be on them, check them hard, and be aggressive. So I thought we did a good job of that in the D zone, but even backtracking through the neutral zone.
What was that third period like, trying to weather that storm that they had? 16 shots on net, and they really came at you.
Yeah, they were coming hard. Give them credit. They were down and they were pushing, and we were getting pucks out, but we couldn't get any in zone time because we were changing because we were a little bit tired in the D zone. So did a good job of weathering it. Like I said, blocks and saves, and obviously we don't want to spend that much time in the D zone in the third, but we got the win.
So, I mean, Jaden Schwartz just continues to be a steadying force for this team. I liked what he said, and Dan Bylsma has said this both after this post game, but then also at practice. There is, also just in transparency, he's been asked about defense, which I personally love. Anytime I don't have to initiate a defensive conversation, I love it. Anyway, the Seattle Kraken and being more defensively responsible. I mentioned a little bit of that coming from, if we have the puck, then we don't have to defend the puck. But as you heard Jaden Schwartz say, and I alluded to it with the shots, and we saw it on the game flow chart, the Kings mounting a comeback, as most teams would, right? I mean, no, I'm not going to make a bad joke. We got the Ooma Hat. It's fine. We got the Ooma Hat. No need to dwell on the past, right? Anyway, the point is that the team, I think, was able to identify that in a different scenario and situation, they do need to be able to spend more time in their offensive zone, even with a lead. They need to find ways to attack. I think that they were content, seems like the wrong word, but they were managing the game as it came to them. And although they didn't spend a lot of time in the offensive zone, which is something that I think they're going to want to push doing forward or do moving forward, the ability to close out the game is the first box that this Seattle Kraken team needed to check. And they did that. So I like it. Good game. Gets me to wear the Ooma hat again here in not so sunny Florida. I'll be back at headquarters, for Wednesday's episode. But on the rest of today's show, I want to talk a little bit about the keys to the game. Taking on Buffalo. And, I don't really subscribe necessarily to the notion of a quote unquote trap game, but we do know that the Seattle Kraken historically, and even in this season, they play differently to different opponents. And Buffalo kind of hit them in the lip the last time these two teams played. So here are the keys that I have for the Seattle Kraken to be successful. And we'll get into that coming up on today's episode. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. Visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken also brought to you by our friends at Select Quote. In sports, having a winning strategy is everything. It's how the best teams make it to the Super Bowl, the World Series, the Stanley Cup playoffs, and the Olympics. The same goes for life. Having a strategy like life insurance from Select Quote can protect your financial legacy and keep your family's future secure. Select Quote makes it easy to find the perfect life insurance policy. As one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, they've helped over 2 million customers find $700 billion in coverage since 1985. What sets Select Quote apart is their personal touch. Unlike other brokers that offer a one-size-fits-all policies, their licensed agents tailor coverage to fit your unique needs. If you're in good health, you might even qualify for some same-day coverage of up to $5 million. No medical exam required. And it's more affordable than you'd think. You can get up to $1 million in coverage for as little as $20 a month. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/LockedOnNHL. Go to selectquote.com/LockedOnNHL today to get started. That's selectquote.com/LockedOnNHL. Select Quote. They shop, you save. All right, Kraken fans, it's a game day. A game day against the Buffalo Sabres, as I like to say, the Sabres, aka the Sabres. And the Seattle Kraken are coming off of one game that was frustrating because of how it ended, one game that was exhilarating because of how it was played. And now the Seattle Kraken are starting to find the viability of the individual skill coming together as a unit. And I have to say, question of the day, I'll reach out to our insiders for this one, but a little bit of an aside, but important. Over under on Chandler Stevenson right now. Zame and I got into some of the stats, and we were really critical of Chandler Stevenson. I mean, his contract and how he had been playing up until the point we recorded that, I think it warranted that. So now it's time to revisit. As of right now, as of this week, Kraken Nation, are you over or under? Are you buying or selling? Are you yay or nay for Chandler Stevenson? Is his game hot or is it kind of cold? Is it ice cold? We'll talk about this later in the week. I just wanted to mention him because he did get, I thought, was a fantastic goal in that win against the Kings. And I think that's, alluding to kind of my first takeaway. We need to continue to see momentum. It is not the time to hit the gas. It is not even the time to crank that thing into neutral. This Seattle Kraken team needs to keep pushing the envelope. They didn't like execution or their defense in the Winnipeg game. I think that the execution was better, but maybe they were a little too flat-footed in the third period in the win against the Kings. When you have players like Chandler Stevenson, Jaden Schwartz, Kaapo, Kakko, and effectively the whole Beniers line, we need them to attack the game. They have to impact the game on both sides. And Chandler Stevenson, we're starting to see him find his stride. So I think he is one of those players that I tap. We need more consistency from. Kaapo, Kakko, Matty Beniers, Jaden Schwartz, Chandler Stevenson, Shane Wright. We're going to get consistency for the most part from Joey Daccord. I want to see the aces step up. It has to happen because now is the time where the scout on the Seattle Kraken is going to show that we're starting to string some good games together. Now, whether they result in a win or a loss, you can't always control that, but we're starting to get some of the habits down. So you need exemplary players, Stanley Cup championship caliber players, veteran players. You need them to accelerate the process. Now is not the time to get comfortable. This Seattle Kraken team has not earned being comfortable. So I want more from Stevenson. I want more from Schwartz. I want more even from Joey Daccord, which is hard to imagine. So basically I'm saying I want him to score a goal. Other things, when we look at this matchup, the overall record, as you can see for the Sabres, 17-23-5, 20-24-3. Power play, 17.7% for the Sabres. They have a 77.3% penalty kill. So their PK is better than ours. They're not as successful on the power play as the Seattle Kraken, which we haven't been all that successful. This is an opportunity on special teams. A reminder, though, that this team took the Kraken to task. They started early and on time. The Seattle Kraken have struggled mightily to get out of the gate with some juice. They have to. That's point number 2. I want consistency, especially from the aces or star players, and you gotta have the juice. I think this is a beautiful thing that the Kraken had peak juice, if you will, in the middle frame. We talk so much about the importance, statistically speaking, of the Seattle Kraken going into the third period leading as opposed to going into the third period trailing. I got to get the juice. We want the juice. We want it early. We want it often. And again, talked about it on the show already, but tighten things up in the third period. If you're winning, I still want this Kraken team to find me some goals. I mean, we got the empty netter, so that's all good and fine, but it would have been a 1-goal game without that empty net goal for the hat trick for Jaden Schwartz. That's tight. This Seattle Kraken team, again, play until your lungs burst. Not literally, but I need them to empty the tank. They are not a team that can rest on their laurels. Their laurels, aka their schedule and their habits, have not been good enough comparative to the potential the Seattle Kraken have on their roster. So sitting back is not an option as far as I'm concerned for the Seattle Kraken. I never want to hear them say anything even remotely close about sitting back. They saw it took 27 seconds for them to be on their way to overtime where they would be guaranteed a point. to losing outright to the top team in the NHL. Inches, small things, small habits. Yes, some luck is involved, but as I love this Dan Bylsmaism, as Dan Bylsma said, you make your own luck. And if you attack the game a little bit more at certain points of that game against Winnipeg, if you read your defensive assignments a little bit better, and that happened in the Kings game, like on that power play goal was just the Kraken off of the face-off. They kind of bumped into each other, but then they didn't recover well. We didn't recover well against Winnipeg when the puck bounces off the stanchion on the glass, and now we're scrambling. And that's exactly what they said on the broadcast. When we scramble, we're in trouble, generally speaking, statistically speaking. So don't get into trouble. Like, is that hard? I think that's what I'm going to say. Just don't get into trouble. And, my final key to this game is it's the Kraken versus everybody. This is, again, not a team that has the luxury of really going deep into a scout, because more often than not, the troubling parts of the game are not what the other team did to stymie the Kraken, which is kind of good. But the frustrating side of that is that we have undone ourselves. Like, we have been our own worst enemy, There's a song about that. Lit. Being your own worst enemy, identifying that you're your own worst enemy, but then changing the habits and behaviors can be a process. I hope that the Kraken are on the other side of the process. I'd love to get to the 3 Fs again. Fun, fast, and forechecking. As a matter of fact, it was a super duper back check by Kakko that I believe that was Jaden's first goal. Give me more of that. That's awareness. That's assertiveness, as we hear Dan Bylsma say. Heady play, strong play. More of that. So, and Oliver Bjorkstrand mentioned it today at practice on Sunday. Playing fast, playing with speed is exactly what we continue to hear this team wants to do. And when they do that, they play at their best. So the 3 Fs, for those who may not be familiar: fun, fast, and forechecking. Not in any particular order. Sometimes I add in a 4th F there: free. Play free. Play like you love the game, like you're blessed to be able to play it as a living, and that you take pride in every shift. I think there's so much potential still for the Seattle Kraken team. We've talked about it before, and I'll get frustrated after the next loss, whenever that may be, and talk about it again. But this is not a team that's out of the woods. This is a team that potentially is flawed in how they were brought together. And I'm not talking expansion draft. I think we're far enough removed. We've made enough moves, or haven't, but we've made some moves since the expansion draft. But to the service of what? Still a question. But the answers that are needed in the immediate timeline is what this Kraken team can do regarding consistency. So we can't even get into some of the other stuff, or at least the players can't. And also, it's literally not their job. But what does the future hold? And sports is a business, and what is possible for the future and beyond is predicated on what you do now. As Janet Jackson once sang, "What have you done for me lately?" The Kraken, they got to get more consistent, but they can do it. It's a game day. It's an afternoon delight. That's not what I want to say. It's an afternoon matinee out in Climate Pledge Arena. I'm still here in sunny Florida, so we're probably, I'm hoping to do a post game. So, I hope you enjoy the game, whether you're at CPA or watching, listening. I'll be listening on the radio and tuning in. I'm at another event in the day, but thankfully they don't overlap. So should be able to listen to most of this game. And of course, on the next episode of Locked On Kraken, we'll break it all down. Can the Kraken continue to pull together wins, pull together really solid games? Well, we'll find out. And it starts tonight at Climate Pledge Arena as the Seattle Kraken host the Buffalo Sabres. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and don't forget, hold fast, stay true, and loud and proud we say, let's go Kraken. I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace out, everybody.